In this video I'm going to show you how I replaced the wheel bearings in our Canam Sypder RT. The process is the same for the other models. The first step is to take the rear wheel out, so I need to jack up the back of the bike. I want to disconnect the bottom shock mount so the swing arm comes down a bit further and allows me to take the belt off without changing the adjustment. I put a jack underneath the brake caliper and then take the bolt out at the bottom of the back shock absorber. By winding the small jack up slightly, I can release the load on the swing arm and allows me to pull the bolt out at the bottom of the shock absorber. I can get rid of the small jack and allow the swing arm to come down further. I need to take the brake caliper off before I take the wheel out. It has two 13mm end bolts that need to come off, one at the back and one at the front. Now, by gently wiggling the caliper, I can slide it off the brake disc. Just be careful you don't damage the ABS sensor. I need to remove the split pin so that I can undo the bolt all the way so I can slide the axle out. But before I do that, I'm going to take the belt off. I can just work the belt sideways by moving the wheel backwards, and it slides off. To undo the bolts, I use a 36mm ring and open-ender spanner that I've cut in half. With the nut off, I can slide the axle out. And then the wheel. The drive sprocket simply lifts out of the wheel. I just use a screwdriver to lever out the grease seal, which exposes the bearing underneath. Now, this bearing on the drive sprocket has a inside circlip that needs to come out. With the circlip out, I'm ready to knock out the bearing. I'm just using an appropriate size socket. The sprocket bearing is a wide bearing. To get at the bearings in the wheel, I need to take the hub out by removing these 5 nuts and bolts. The brake disc side bearing is another small bearing. Once I take the seal off, I can see that this bearing isn't held in place by anything, so I can tap it straight out. So I've just used an old socket shaft on the appropriate size socket to tap it out. There's a huge complicated looking nut that stops the other bearing being knocked out, and I've had to make up a little tool so that I could take that nut out. It beats me why this was thought necessary to be part of the design. Anyway, with the big complicated nut out of the way, I can tap the last bearing out. Now I'm ready to put the new bearings in. But before I do that, I'm going to put some extra grease in them. I've found in the past that bearings don't have a huge amount of grease in them when you just buy them. So a little bit of extra bearing grease really makes them go a lot longer. Now it's just a simple matter of tapping the new bearings back into position. I've put a little grease around the outside just to help them slide in place. Again, using the appropriate size socket, they tap down quite easily. And then with their grease seal on top. If there's a gap between the seal and the bearing, I always put a little bit of extra grease in there as well, just to help things stay lubricated. I think you get the general idea now. I won't show you the other bearings being put in. Doing this job myself has made me feel like a real man. I may not be able to hunt for wild game, but I can at least do a bit of maintenance.